Hello, today I have a message that'll interest anybody that's buying, selling, and the agents that are involved. So this weekend I did some showings, and I'm always telling the other agents, if you're looking for content, just look at your everyday events. There's always something going on that somebody needs to know more about. Note it and talk about it. So I had a showing in Pembroke Pines on Saturday, and one of the things you have to think about is who is the most important person at the showing of a property. You have the seller, the buyer, and you also have two agents. So the way I like to work, and of course this is my opinion, is that I like to arrive at the property. If I am the seller's agent, I like to greet my people, the people coming in, and I like to give the buyer the opportunity to tell me how he would like to view the house. So I'll tell them, would you like a tour of the home, or would you rather walk around, look at it, and then ask me any questions? Obviously, I'm going to follow them around, and I want to keep them together. I don't like people that show up and just spread out through the house. That doesn't work, especially if the sellers have all their valuables at home. It's just not a good idea. When you're showing a vacant property, there's no seller to worry about. There's no seller's agent usually there to worry about either. And you get to meet with your customer and continue your discovery process. If you don't know what discovery process is, it'll be coming up in more of my videos, but if you listen to my previous videos, I'm sure that you'll get it in there. So I get to ask more questions, and you also have an opportunity for the buyer to look and say, hey, that kitchen is too small, the bedroom is too small, because a lot of times, even if somebody quotes square footage on a property on what they're looking for, they might not be able to really see or get the feel of the square footage that they're discussing. So I've seen people that have walked into a home that's 1,400 square feet, and it's been laid out with an open design, and the rooms have a good size, and they get excited about it. And they've walked into homes that are 1,800 square feet and said, wow, this is really not a good fit for me. So layout has a lot to do with it, not just square footage. And sometimes you need to show a customer that before they get the whole gist of it. Most people that I encounter don't really have the idea yet, unless they've already been shopping. Which is another thing that you need to know. When somebody says, I'm looking for this specific square footage, they've probably been looking for properties for a while already. So now we move on. We're going to go see a property that has a listing agent and has a seller on premises. Who is the most important person at one of these meetings? It's the buyer. I know the seller is very important too, but the buyer is coming to your property. Now we pull out all the stops and set up the home so they can see it comfortably. That's why we keep it clean. That's why we keep it smelling fresh. Bacon is not a fresh smell for a home, even though a lot of people like that when they walk in. Buyer gets to the property, and step one, let's ask the buyer how they want to view the property. Would you like to walk through the home and ask questions if you choose, or would you like to have the home shown to you? This is something that I talked to with the listing agent. This Saturday I was showing property, and the listing agent insisted, without talking to us first, to start discussing the neighborhood and property taxes and the schools. And you know what? I'm an agent, and we brought them there. I was working with another agent. In life you have to qualify people, and by that I'm not talking about financing. We'll get into that too in another video, but you have to qualify them. And if you're talking to a person who's already been speaking to an agent, you have to assume that they got to that neighborhood in that home because they already spoke to the buyer and asked them what they were looking for as far as neighborhoods go and as far as schools go. So leave that to the buyer's agent. Don't assume that that's your responsibility. Your responsibility is to facilitate my showing of the home. So when I get there, usually I respect the listing agent by saying, hey, would you show us the home? But usually right when I walk in front of the listing agent, I'll turn to the buyer and ask them, would you like to view the home first, ask questions later, or would you like the property shown to you? So I arrived, walked in. It was my first meeting with my buyer as well. So the listing agent, decided that he wanted to give a tour of the home. So he started giving details about the property to the buyer that at the moment were unnecessary. Why is it unnecessary? Because, showings change with the buyer that you're working with, but a lot of times buyers will walk into a home and they pretty much know that that house is not for them. And then other times they walk in, the home is okay, but they look around and they might find other features that fascinate them. So this guy wanted to walk through. First of all, he started talking to him about the taxes and the association fees and all that. Now, he failed to qualify me as well as the other agent that I was with, as well as the buyers. By qualify, I'm not talking about financing, and you'll see another video that I have about qualifying people. I'm going to be doing that one next. But he started telling them things that he didn't know if they already knew. He didn't know if that was their first home, their second home, and things that are my responsibility, not his. So the other thing is, buyer walks in, maybe immediately likes the house. Maybe he's not sure yet, but it took us 20 minutes just to get out of, well, I'm exaggerating maybe. It took us about 6 minutes to get past the foyer. At that, before we got to that point, I turned to the buyer and I said, would you like to walk through the house, see if you like it, and then ask questions? And he said, yes, that's what I would like. So I pretty much freed my buyer and myself from having to endure this listing agent's presentation. So it was all about him showing how smart he is regarding the neighborhood and such. He mentioned that he lived in the neighborhood. He mentioned that he's very busy in the neighborhood. To me, that's disrespectful, because at that point he's trying to what would you call that? He's trying to make himself more valuable to the buyer than I would be. But he hasn't qualified me, so he doesn't know what I know. I shut him down. Now, so back to my explanation. So the buyer's the most important person there. The second most important person there, if they stay, are the sellers. So you want everybody to be happy. I'm sure the seller has directed the agent to do certain things the way they want it to, but they're not there. And again, it's my buyer. So when I walk in with my buyer, address me, not my buyer, which is what I do if I'm the listing agent. When an agent comes in with their buyer, I immediately ask them if they would prefer. And I talk to the agent. I try not to address the buyer directly because I want to be as respectful as possible. So that being said, buyer's most important. Ask them how they want to see the house. We can talk about how to show a house too, because that's important. You don't want to walk into the kitchen and say, that's the kitchen. You want to say things that are more appropriate. Listen for one of those videos coming up soon too. So we walked through the house. The buyer was interested, but not super interested. So all the other details that were being dumped on him from the beginning of the conversation were unnecessary. That was, like I said, my first meeting with the buyer. When we got outside, we chatted a little. Never chat inside the house. You don't want to offend anybody. But he laughed at a lot of the things that were said and done. So it's good to make sure that you set yourself in a situation like that where the other agent is not being respectful, being kinder, because he might not have had an ulterior motive. He may just not have been experienced enough to know that what he was doing was not acceptable. But the buyer came out. I answered a few more of his questions. So that's it for now. Hope you like the backdrop. Give me some feedback, whether it's positive or not, because I'm going to keep doing this and it's not always going to be fish.